Welcome to Box Out Banter. We are now 2 weeks into the NBA season. Chris Okamura, Jordan Christmas. Jordan, how are you doing? How are the games for you?
2 weeks into the season, and we already had a legacy game yesterday in January of a 12-year career. But yeah, games have been. This season has been weird so far to start. There have been a lot of blowouts. We can maybe talk about that later, why there's just seem to be so many blowouts. But, it's still early. It's a weird season. Teams have had abbreviated training camps. I'm trying so hard to just hold back not any and all, but like overarching thoughts on teams, because some teams you just want to see them at what they look like after 10 or 15 games, abbreviated season. So the amount of games you need to see a team find its identity is a bit shorter. But it's still very early, but it's interesting nonetheless. How have you been taking in these games?
The same. I think the thing that's so weird about these games is that some games teams will look really, really good, and then other games will just look absolutely terrible. It's like the perfect example is the Clippers game, the Clippers Mavericks game, right? If you just watch that game, you're like, wow, the Clippers are bad. And then you watch the rest of them, you're like, oh, the Clippers are really good, actually. The Clippers are still like a good team. I don't know what's going on. And then you watch something like the Bucks, where they're really good, and then they lose by 20 to the Knicks, and you're like, what is going on? And obviously there's a caveat too that, again, it is early, and the thing is too that some of these losses are coming where teams are just resting people a lot.
Yeah.
Like the other night, the Heat rested pretty much everyone. But even then, like there's so much difference game to game of like how each team's performing. We're not going to know for another month or so.
Also, like the back-to-backs where a team is staying in a city, much like the Celtics did in Detroit this past weekend. You got Hornets Sixers is going on right now, but it's the second game in Philadelphia for the Hornets.
Right. So here,
there's a lot of weird variability. There's variabilities that are definitely stuff we haven't seen before necessarily in an NBA season. So it's taken a bit to recalibrate for me personally.
Yeah, so this is something that I did want to talk about. I think Kyle Kuzma brought this up the other day, and I've heard other players bring it up too, that they do like the smaller series kind of stuff, where you stay in a city for a period of time. Yeah, I like it too. I like it in terms of like, well, I think because we're kind of nerds, where it's the idea that there's adjustments, the micro adjustments.
Yeah, mini adjustments, even in a regular season game.
Right. Like, I love seeing that kind of stuff.
Yep.
It makes the games more interesting to me, but I can see from a casual fan perspective of like, we just watch this game, we kind of know how it's going to turn out. And obviously you're not going to get, when you play teams back to back, like the Lakers played, who'd they just play? Not the Grizzlies, the series before that, the Spurs. They played the Spurs back to back nights. And so, yeah, the Lakers are going to win both games, but I think for me, the interesting thing was seeing like the micro adjustments and sort of the little mini things that they were doing differently between games, which is super fascinating to me. But I could see it from a casual fan perspective of like, this is boring. We just saw this the other day. We know what's going to happen.
I could definitely see why players would like it because, there's less traveling, there's less inflammation. When you're not traveling, one night you could be playing in Utah and then you could fly all the way to New Orleans. And I think another reason why traveling has kind of been a little bit iffy is because we have two teams on the East Coast that are in the Western Conference, which is also weird, and probably honestly it makes a better case for expanding the league. I like the home and home series though, because like you said, we're basketball fans. We like to see the micro adjustments, like seeing. I know you said we'll talk about the game later, but another back-to-back was the Blazers Warriors that just happened over the weekend. And seeing the adjustments from the Blazers blowing out the Warriors and then the Warriors adjusting and putting Steph on the ball, just adjustments like that are kind of interesting to me. I think the league, when it's all said and done by the end of the year, I think there's a lot of stuff from the bubble and this abbreviated new season that the league can take and implement. Like, I like that they've already taken what they did from the bubble in terms of putting more extra space around the court. I think it gives players a safe landing zone. It gives players more incentive to try more daring attacks at the rim with, not complete abandon for their body, but at least they have a larger space to land as opposed to trying to calculate where you're going to land and not hit the photographers or the people in the front rows. And, looking at the aesthetics of that, I still don't see a reason why you can't have the same amount of fans as normal, just space when things get back to normal, of course, when this however many years it takes to get by this pandemic or whenever fans come back. But if fans do come back, maybe you could keep the spacing around the court. I see no reason why they can't do that. So I think there's things they could definitely pick up from this weird calendar year for the league,
No, totally agree. So, do you want to start with this Steph Curry thing? Do you want to talk?
Yeah, let's start with the Steph Curry legacy game last night. Well, like I mentioned, it was a mini series. The Blazers played back-to-back home games in Oracle Arena on Saturday, or I believe, on Friday, and then yesterday, Blazers blew out the Warriors on Friday, and of course, fueled extra by the fact that it's Damian Lillard versus Stephen Curry, and the debate Lillard sparked over Twitter and the internet with his play last year where he was just incredible. I think this amplified the Steph discourse because we already talked about this on the pod, but going into the season, somehow weirdly this was seen as a legacy season for Stephen Curry or a legacy defining season, and I just don't. That's just not true. I think his career is air seal tight. His resume is done for me. So of course, when the Blazers blew out the Warriors on Friday, the jokes were flying all over the place. It was, Katie was the real best player. Steph can't carry a team. You need to build a specific team around Steph. All the tropes that people who started watching basketball after 2017 are saying. But Steph reminded us yesterday just who the fuck he is. He dropped 62, a 60 burger on Dame Dolla's head after Dame was talking, not mad shit, but he said that, Steph Curry's shots are coming a little bit tougher. It's not as easy this time around. And Dame after the game said, hey, if I can't, I got to be able to take it if I can dish it. And
I have a lot of respect.
Which is also
for Dame.
It's a main reason why I love Dame too. Like I love Damian Lillard.
The thing is, I think people used Dame's comments to fuel the Steph Curry argument, but I don't think Dame was actually saying anything wrong. I think he was just kind of like stating kind of factually that the Warriors are bad and it's harder for Steph to get shots off, which is absolutely fair.
Oh yeah, it just how it is. It just gets taken like that. And also, you got guys like Channing Frye and other people just people, analysts who have hated Steph Curry for a long time, players who used to play in the league that are now analysts when they played during when Steph Curry was on the rise. They are kind of, getting in their pot shots now that the Warriors aren't good anymore. But Steph dropped 62 points with 8 made 3-pointers, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and he had 35 at halftime, and you could just tell immediately that okay, like he wanted to remind us. It was personal for him, and you could tell. And I've been holding back on wanting to, because me and my friend were texting talking about the Warriors' playoff chances and stuff like that. And I'm still I want to wait 10 to 15 games before the season starts because one, I think seeds 4 through 10 in the conference might not be as good as I thought. So I think the Warriors could get some wins in there, especially when you have a top 3 player like Steph or a top 4, wherever you want to put him. And yeah, when you play the Nets and the Bucks right off the bat, you're going to look terrible. And I don't think the Warriors are as bad as they looked. Even though they've been terrible, they've been absolutely god-awful. I don't think they can play. I don't think that's the real them. I think when Draymond came back, it was a Patton and Draymond game. 1 point, 8 assists, rebounds, and a game-high plus 22. Him coming back defensively, the Warriors were great with him on the floor, off the floor. They were terrible. Typical Draymond and his impact on the Warriors. I just think we have to wait a little bit. I think the Warriors are still a playoff team, especially because Steph's not going to shoot 36% from three.
No. Oh, well, so my thing is with the Warriors, is I think they're still bad, but I think this was like a moment for Steph to go and realize like what needs to be done. And I think for them to have any kind of success the rest of the year, Steph has to do the 06, 07 Kobe stuff where it's just like, give me the ball and let me just go.
Yep.
And let me take over. And that has to be their game plan because everything else that they do doesn't work.
Yeah.
If they let anyone else do like the stuff that they were running before, and I know Steve Kerr has talked about it before of like, and I think we talked about it last week of like, hey, the system works, you're going to run the system, whatever, all that stuff. It doesn't work. You have to give Steph the ball and just let him cook.
I will say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Otherwise, like Kelly Oubre, how many threes can Kelly Oubre miss? How many turnovers can Andrew Wiggins have before you go, yeah, Steph could have the ball the entire time?
Like, you're having Steph set back screens for Oubre and Wiggins, and it's like, yeah, that works if they weren't. Well, I don't think Oubre has been as bad of a shooter as he's shown, but I mean, setting back screens for Wiggins, like, come on, man. Like, and also, I will say, with Draymond coming back on Friday and Saturday, or Friday, it just looked like he hadn't played in a year, and also looked like, because he had COVID and then the foot injury to start the year, but Sunday he looked like I wouldn't say vintage Draymond Green because there was still stuff on defense he was missing, but all the basic stuff and the rotations he had down pat. And also I think on offense, it'll help the Warriors a little bit just by the fact that they have another ball handling big that can pass. Like, you see Oubre and Wiggins were a bit more effective last night because, in transition, they were filling the lanes properly because Draymond had the ball and Steph filled his proper lane. And then you're not having Wiggins, Oubre, and Wiseman trying to run dribble handoffs with Steph and all the off-ball stuff the Warriors have liked to do for years. They were running some of that last night, even though Steph had the ball way more in his hands, probably since the Mark Jackson era. They still ran some Steph Curry dribble handoffs with Draymond Green because he's just a smart offensive player. And I think the Warriors need every little bit of help they can get. Especially, we already know Draymond's impact on the defensive end, but just anything could help the Warriors. I am also just really down to see a year where Steph Curry takes like 25 shots a game, because I think he needs to take 30 shots a game in order for the Warriors to
have
even
any kind of success.
Have any kind of success against contenders and good teams. I think the bad teams, not so much, right? But if you're talking about the seeds 4 through 10 in the West for the playoffs and then the play-in games, Curry's gonna. If Curry's not getting 20 shots, 25 shots at least, that's a failure in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. He's again. I completely agree that Draymond kind of gives them another tool and another smart player, but I don't necessarily think that he like makes them good enough to a point where I go like, yeah, they're a playoff team. Well, I think it's stable. I think it stabilizes them, and it to me last night showed, and like their improvement just shows me that like, okay, yeah, Steph just needs to like take every shot, and he needs to play 48 minutes or a ton of minutes.
Oh yeah, that's a big part of it.
Because if he doesn't go off, that game is they still lose that game.
Oh yeah. Oh 100%. Of course. It's just Draymond makes the shots. Draymond gave Steph some shots yesterday that necessarily weren't there when Kerr was trying to run a calculus offense for NBA
but again,
players.
I think that just comes down to like, it just gives them another piece on the chessboard, so to speak. But it's not like you still need. Steph just needs to go off almost every game for them to even have a shot against some of these good teams.
Oh yeah, well, I think Draymond's defensive impact will also help too, because I think that's also just as big. Because even when he wasn't there, like the Warriors were giving up 1,000 points, and then you saw last night, when Draymond was on the court, the Warriors
still gave up 122 points.
Well, look at the on-off splits with Draymond, is what I'm saying. So, like, last night, the Warriors had a 100 defensive rating when Draymond was on the court. And then when they were off the court and it was just, Looney, Wiseman, Wiggins, and, guys like Brad Wanamaker, guys filling in those roles, it was a 131 defensive rating. So I think the Warriors need it. I know. So I think Draymond on that end at least is going to keep the Warriors in some games because let's be real, like Wiseman is raw as hell. Wiggins is not a good defender at all. Oubre, he's a great on-ball defender, but man, does he lack attention when he gets put in any kind of off-ball action or whatever. And they need a defensive player of the year guy like Draymond to at least make sure the Warriors defense isn't league worst bad,
Sure.
So I still am a big believer in Steph and Draymond. I think the Warriors are a low seed playoff team, but it was just funny how this was a legacy game. And, it's Twitter talk. People joke on Twitter. Like, I've learned over the years not to take it as seriously. But I do still get slightly annoyed with the Steph discourse because I still don't think we've been properly able to contextualize just the type of great player that he is. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
Sure. I can see that. I think we disagree just in terms of him being the second greatest point guard ever. I still have him in the top 5, top 10 point guards ever. I think I have him somewhere in the range of like 4 to 7. I'm not entirely sure where, but like it's not like he's a terrible player. And I don't think a bad season or a year like this with this kind of team, I don't think should hurt his legacy in the way that people are saying it's going to. But
because it's like on one hand it's like, okay, well, Steph won championships and proved people wrong, but then it's like, let's see you be put in a awful situation to try to win a championship. It's just backwards to me. And also,
it comes down to a thing where I think the problem is people keep comparing him to LeBron, where they're completely different players and they do different things. And I think LeBron's game is more suited to carrying scrubs just because of his size and what he's able to bring to the floor. That's different than what Steph brings. And I think like comparing someone to a player like LeBron is completely unfair.
Oh yeah, any comparison to LeBron, possibly the greatest player ever, is unfair.
Right. So that's why I kind of think the discourse is of just like when it's like anything, like, oh, Steph's great, but is he better than LeBron did this? Well, yeah, and that's LeBron. You can't compare Steph to LeBron. It's not, it's a different kind of conversation here,
right?
Where it's like, Steph isn't 6'9", 6'10".
Well, my thing
like
is,
a tank.
Steph can win with non-NBA, all-NBA players. Like Draymond Green and Klay Thompson weren't all-NBA players Klay Thompson made the 2013 All-NBA team. It was before Steph won his first championship. And also, anybody who gets 50 wins under Mark Jackson as their head coach, that's a fucking success to me.
Okay, see, I like Mark Jackson as a coach. So.
I did too, but I did too. But looking back at some of those games, man, like I'm having some, it might be revisionist, but Jackson really had some archaic offenses. And when he got fired, I remember I wrote about it at the time. I was like, the only options have got to be Kerr and David Blatt, because like I don't know why they're firing Mark Jackson, because he was their most successful head coach to that point. But, obviously they got Kerr and the rest is history. But I'm just saying, like the Warriors championship teams didn't just appear. Like, they didn't just say abracadabra, boom, here's 3 championships. Like, Steph built that shit from the ground up. And I think people who started watching basketball after 2017 just they don't remember that, Well,
you got to remember too that there's a lot of Warriors fans out there, and there's a lot of people out there that
are just
that are just really bandwagony.
Mm-hmm. And then there's bandwagon haters too, which is funny.
Right. But then I will say that there's a lot of Warriors fans and like Steph Curry fans in particular that do put him on a really high pedestal that they don't understand. Like, there's a lot of Warriors fans that also started watching around that time too. Yeah. And Steph fans that don't understand the context. So they have Steph as the GOAT, which he's not.
Oh, no, he's not.
And so I think that's where the fight comes in. Where it's you have the people that are too high on Steph and people that are really low on Steph, and then they just kind of meet in the middle, and then everyone else kind of takes sides.
Yeah, it becomes Infinity Wars.
Right.
Right.
And then that like, and again, I'm not as high on Steph as some people are, but I think I have him fairly rated. I don't see him as the best player ever. Like, I had this discussion with someone the other day that thinks Steph Curry is the greatest player of all time because he changed the NBA.
No,
and I was like,
he's not
yes.
the GOAT. He's not the GOAT.
So, and again, and I always put a step on, like, he didn't change the NBA. The 3-point movement was already happening. Steph just pushed it to another level.
Yeah, there is some truth to that, but he did make the off the dribble three a more potent shot. Him and James Harden. James Harden step back and Steph's off the dribble three. I think changed the dynamic with that.
I always think that Dirk doesn't get enough credit for the 3-point movement. I think Dirk is the most important guy for the 3-point movement, just pulling bigs out of the paint and saying, like, hey, my bigs can shoot threes. That's, to me, the most important thing for the kind of where we are right now in the NBA is Dirk.
Yeah,
and I don't think people understand that. Everyone kind of credits Curry and Harden and, like, the deep bombers, but, like, to me, it starts with Dirk, and people don't understand that enough.
Yeah,
but whatever. That's a different conversation.
Oh yeah. Speaking of the I don't want, this is Warriors adjacent, but you replied to one of my tweets today, and I actually wanted to save it for the show. But so after seeing John Wall and Kevin Durant, and seeing how they've looked off of, Achilles surgery, I have to say I feel a lot more optimistic about Klay Thompson than what I did back in November. Now, there's a few caveats to this. John Wall took 18 months, basically 2 years off to come back. But it's still incredible just how fast he looks. I was watching both Kings games, another back-to-back in Houston, or back-to-back thing in the NBA, but the Kings were in Houston for the weekend, and it was basically like watching this is like when I was watching Saturday morning cartoons as a kid, and I saw the episode where Superman and Flash were racing around the world, and that's what it was like watching De'Aaron Fox and John Wall. It was just,
people don't realize how fast. People don't realize how fast John Wall still is, and, like, I tried to explain this to someone the other day of, like, someone told me that John Wall was never that good. I was like, dude, John Wall at one point was the fastest player I've ever seen on the basketball court.
One of my friends also said that John. Well, actually, it's our mutual friend. When he first started watching basketball, he said John Wall was bad and he was just a rookie. And I was like, what? But I've loved John Wall for a long time.
I've always been a big fan of John Wall, and so for him coming back, I love it. The thing that I replied to your tweet about, is my only concern with Klay is the lateral movement defensively. Yep. Because, like,
even with Wall and Durant, you see it a little bit. Like,
they're just losing a step. And so my concern is, like, with Durant and Wall, they're elite athletes. So when you have them losing a step, you're just kind of bringing them down to, like, human levels.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Where with Klay is not an elite athlete, and a lot of his defensive capabilities were built on his fundamentals and his intelligence as a defender, and sort of his.
I think those would help him as he
right. But my thing is, like, when you have someone that has average to maybe kind of even below average athleticism for an NBA player, losing a step is a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
especially when he has to chase around these guys as a primary on-ball defender, the guys that he's trying to keep up with. Losing a step for him, and different than Wall or Beal or Wall or I don't know why every time I say Wall, I want to say Beal
because they were a fun backcourt. I love that backcourt.
But even watching Wall and Durant, the step that they're losing, I can see impacting Klay a lot more.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. It just
offensively, I have no concerns.
Offensively, I have no concerns. I guess it just depends for me how often do we, because, like, I think I mentioned it a few pods ago, but even when you watch John Wall, like, there are, like, two out of every 5 times or so, where 2 out of every 5 possessions where you could see he lost the step that you were talking about. So I guess for me, it's how many of those times are we going to see that happen to Klay? And I do think it will be more often than not, but obviously to me he's the second greatest shooter ever. I think he's a smart, intelligent defender. And I think that will help a little bit, but I do feel more optimistic about Klay.
If I'm picking jump shots, I'd rather have Klay's jump shot than Steph's.
Or you're just talking about pure form, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'd rather have
also, like, Klay Thompson is probably, like, him and Steph are probably, like, the 2 best heat check guys, just from the sense of, like, they could score points in bunches in a quick hurry. Like, we see more often now players are dropping like 15 or 20 points in the quarter. Like, Steph and Klay were doing that like at the height of their Warriors run, even before Durant came there. And I have seen a lot of those blow-ups too, like the offensive explosions. Like, yesterday also reminded me that it just felt like the early 2010s before the Warriors were on the rise. It was like Steph Curry was the premier league pass player to watch. Whenever the Warriors were on, well, I was lucky. I lived in Humboldt and the Bay and Northern California, so I got it on cable. But Steph Curry is the league pass guy to watch whenever he's on like that, and it was really fun. So I am more optimistic about Klay, though, going back to our original point. But he might take a step back on defense for sure. So I know we've talked about half an hour basically about the Warriors. I wanted to mention some young players that have seemingly their stock has gone up. Let's talk about your guy, Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, man.
Like, Brandon Ingram taking another leap, and that 3-point shot, dude, like, he's figured it out. The Pelicans are 4-2 right now. Their starting lineup, I'm trying to pull up the numbers on cleaning the glass, but I know Stan Van Gundy has talked about with the starting unit that the offense seems clunky. Well, that's what happens when you don't surround Lonzo, Zion, and Ingram with enough shooting, although the defense and rebounding has been to par with that starting unit. But Brandon Ingram averaging 24 points per game, seven rebounds, slightly over 5 assists per game, but he's shooting it at a 59.7, a near 60% true shooting percentage. His free throw rate is at a career high. He has taken another leap as a playmaker so far. What have you liked about Brandon Ingram so far, man? I know Laker fans still protect Zoe and Ingram like they're their babies, and Josh Hart too. I know you guys still keep track of them and check in on Pelicans games, but what have you seen from your boy?
To me, it's always been the consistency of his shot that's kind of held him back.
Yep.
Because when he was with the Lakers, he was always good in getting to the rim. He's fantastic around the rim because of he's a long boy.
Yeah, this is the definition of a long boy.
So he uses his length really well. I think there's some players that don't use their length that well, but he uses his length perfectly, where he's able to kind of get around defenders, leave his body behind kind of, and just kind of slither around defenders with his arms.
Mm-hmm.
He's fantastic at that. He's fantastic at kind of working his way around the rim in that way.
It helps on those interior passes too. Like, his arms are just stretching around people. Stretch
Armstrong, dude. And he's fantastic at doing that. And so what defenders would start to do is they start to sag off and really wait for him to do that, because it was kind of the only thing he could do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when he started developing the mid-range game. He had a great turnaround that he still uses right now, but now he's spread it out to the 3-point line. He's shooting 42% from 3, which is fantastic.
And, the last 2 years with the Pelicans now, he's hovering right around over 6 attempts per game. The Lakers years, he was averaging just over 2 attempts per game. And you could tell his shot has changed too. Like, he's worked on his mechanics and all that.
Yeah. And so all the 3-point shot opens up everything else, because he has fantastic playmaking ability.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you have him, when you give him that much space, now the whole floor opens up, right? I think also having guys like JJ Redick around on the floor with him and Lonzo Ball. Lonzo's gotten a lot better, a lot more confidence shooting. He's not making them at that high a clip, but the mechanics look so much better. The
It's early.
consistency is so much
He'll come
better.
around.
Yeah.
I believe in that shot.
But like just watching it, it looks so much cleaner. And every time he shoots it, it looks like it's going in. It's not like he's missing like by a mile.
Yeah,
like
it's not. He's not clanking it, far right or far left or complete back iron.
And plus when you have Zion diving to the basket, and like I think the offense just functions so well with him being sort of the primary ball handler.
Yep.
At least in the half court, where he's thriving in it, and it's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I'm proud of my boy.
Mm-hmm.
I still have some rookie cards that I'm holding that I got super cheap.
I imagine might be really valuable very soon.
Well, so I bought the cards I have. I bought they're PSA 10s. They're Prism rookies. For anyone that knows cards, those are like
that's the highest graded card, right? PSA 10.
Yeah, so PSA 10 is like the grade, but they're Prism basketball. So Prism basketball is like the top set you want to buy. And so I have his rookie cards from 2017, I think.
Mm.
Yeah. So I have those cards. I have a couple of them, and I bought them for like $10-15 a piece. And so right now, I checked them the other day. They're going for about $700 to $800.
Oh my God!
Just chilling on them, just holding them.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a FaceTime with my friend soon, who he's been collecting basketball cards for it not too long, but it's been a minute now. Like he's I think you could say he's firmly in the game, so to speak.
Yeah,
but
I got some deep cuts. I got some LeBron rookies, and
oh wow, you've been collecting for a minute then, like a minute.
Well, my dad collected cards, so that's where it comes. That's where it comes from.
Okay, then okay, yeah. I missed the basketball card train as a kid. I was more into Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Pokemon cards, like cards you could, I guess, play.
I got those too, man.
I still have them, and I was looking up, card values the other day. So
yeah,
on some cards,
I got my Charizard. I still need to send it into PSA.
Damn, you have a holo Charizard?
I do. I pulled it in a pack when I was 4 years old.
Oh wow! So that must be like first edition.
No, it's unlimited set. So it's base set, but it's unlimited, so it's not first edition. But still worth a decent amount of money. But I'm worried about sending it through the mail. So like
right. I'll start collecting basketball cards soon. I'm sure
let me know.
Oh yeah, now I have two resources. Shout out to George, our number one fan of this podcast, as he self-proclaims.
He might be.
Yeah. So one, I'm sure longtime card collectors will be happy about another player that is jumping the value if they own this card. But I have to say, I'm gonna have to put. I wanted to see a little bit more. I wanted to see a leap from him, but I gotta put Domantas Sabonis. I gotta boost him up into my tier 2 of NBA players because he has been fucking awesome. He was an all-star last year, and you could already kind of see that the Pacers were running their offense through the more, especially at the elbows. He's the father of Arvydas Sabonis, one of the best passing big men of all time in basketball history. Taking the lead this year.
Didn't join the NBA till he was in his late 30s too. Scary.
Yeah. We really, I wish we could have seen what. Well, me and you were too young for prime Arvydas, but if he had entered the NBA in his prime, I would have loved to have seen the Basketball Reference page on his career stats and stuff because it seemed like he was incredible. But his son, Domantas, averaging a little under 21 points per game, 11 rebounds, nearly 7 assists per game. It's his team now, firmly, I believe, especially with Victor Oladipo's, contract situation and stuff, which surprisingly hasn't affected the team that much. But their new coach is clearly running everything through Sabonis. He's getting Sabonis to take more threes, although it's not really much. He's taking over 2 a game, which is the most since his rookie year. But he's not. It's not Nikola Jokic-esque, but it's in the same fabric, right? It's the passing big at the foul line,
but not just passing big, but
a scorer like
passing. But the thing with Sabonis is Sabonis plays.
He's a bully. Like
he plays more in the post than I feel like Jokic does. Jokic doesn't use his size in the way that I think when you think
he doesn't use his size scoring in the post,
big, right?
Yeah,
but Sabonis,
as much.
Sabonis does. Sabonis bullies around.
Yeah, he doesn't mess like he lowers his shoulder into dudes.
Yeah.
The difference between Jokic and Sabonis post-ups is Sabonis, he'll post up to score a bit more. I think Jokic could do that in his sleep, but Jokic is he's a savant passing. His passing out of the post-up's just deadly, so he chooses that first. But Sabonis is mean, man. Like he'll lower the shoulder on you, he'll dunk on you, he'll bump the defender off his spot and then drop a nice dump off pass. Like Sabonis is a legit like tier 2 already, but I think there's more room to grow for him, especially if he takes more threes, if he improves his free throw percentage. But he's already taking a career high in free throw attempts. Like it seems like they have given the keys to Sabonis, and the Pacers offense has been better for it. Victor Oladipo, he's looked actually kind of decent. I mean, it's still on and off because of the injury, because he's still knocking off rust, I feel, but man, Sabonis has been awesome, and I just love. Me personally, I just love versatile. I love versatile big men.
I just like post play. I miss
post play is we know nerds that post play is not the most efficient offense, but it's just the aesthetic and the aesthetic variety of it that I like. Plus,
footwork. I love the footwork and
I love every part of basketball, even mostly the perceived worst, because there are things I don't like, but posting up, and I could tell you as somebody who, was masquerading as a 6-foot flat center in high school. I like post ups, and I like the skill that it takes to, it is a form of isolation too, which, I did grow up on, with Allen Iverson, T-Mac, Kobe, Vince Carter. It's just a nice, cool change up of basketball. But I love that the post has kind of evolved, right? That's the thing with this. Like, the big men have evolved more than anything. It's not that the post is dying or the post up was dying. I just think in the middle of the 2010 decade, bigs had a curve to catch up on in terms of evolution of skill and talent, right? Because, they were a little bit behind. It was usually, and I could tell you from experience growing up, like, it was get your butt in the post. What do you do with shooting out there? That's why Dirk was such an anomaly, and guys like Charles and maybe Shaq couldn't understand why Dirk was 7 feet tall and not near the basket. It's because Dirk is a skilled offensive player. Same with, it's like the whole discourse, It's like the whole discourse with Shaq and every big man ever. Like, if it's not exactly like how Shaq does it, then people just assume that bigs are dead. And I just don't agree with that. I just think it's evolved.
It's the difference between, like, what people view as, like, the traditional big man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, like,
most definitely.
Like, what I would call, like, a power big. Like, I think the idea of a power big where your only job is to, like, defend the paint and dominate the paint, I think is kind of, like, not dead, but I think that role that
gets played off the floor pretty easily in the playoffs now.
That function is not necessary. Like, that's kind of what Dwight is at this point in his career.
Yeah,
and you see it in sort of some situations.
I'm loving it during the regular season, but I know come playoff time, I'm afraid of, like, if there's a matchup Dwight's not good with, we don't have a backup plan. You know what I mean?
Dwight's the good thing with Dwight is that he still has some lateral mobility and athleticism to stay with guys on the perimeter, so it's not too much of a liability. But offensively, it certainly hurts.
Yeah, but it's more in that same vein we were talking about. It's like those guys, like the DeAndre Jordans, right? Like, those guys.
DeAndre Jordan's a better example.
Yeah, that would probably be a better example. Like the bigs that are just their defense, rebounding, and clean up around the basket. I think those get played off the floor pretty easily. And now we're seeing a resurgence of bigs with Sabonis, with Jokic, with Embiid, with Gobert, Ayton now on the come up, Cat. I still think Cat is a player you can win a championship with. Just in terms of if you make me the GM, I think I could. It sounds very arrogant and presumptuous of me to say, but I'm just talking mainly. If you made me the GM and you're like, do you think you could build a championship team around Cat? My answer would be yes. I think there are things you can do to make a championship team around Cat, much like with Booker and a few other out of position examples. But the big man is evolving, and I think it's cool more than anything. And I think the post play, it's not dead. It's just different, and different's cool in a lot of ways. So,
right, I totally agree. The thing I want to see more of, and it's my favorite thing in basketball, is the inverted post up, where your big is the one, passing into the post to a guard who's posting up a smaller guard. Like Jordan used to do all the time. Kobe used to do all the time.
Like Embiid and Simmons do, although Simmons doesn't have the post offense.
Right, but when you talk about like guards that have post presence and can play in the post, like Steve Smith used to do it all the time. Like you just invert the post, right?
Oh my God! If the Wolves get Cade Cunningham, they're going to be automatically my league pass team next year.
Yeah, because Cat can handle the ball, and then Cade has the size to post up and the skill to post up any kind of guard.
And Cat is taking like 10th. Well, before he got hurt, but he was already trending that way last year. He was taking like 8 threes a game at like 43%. So
it's so much fun to watch. I love watching inverted post play because most of the time the guard doesn't know how to defend in the post,
and the big doesn't know is out on uncharted waters out on the perimeter.
And so then you just have this dynamic where the offense is fully in control. And
where they can dictate the terms all the time.
Right, and then most of the time, if the guard gets by his man and goes to the basket, the big has to go and recover, and it's a wide open shot for the center up top, right?
Yeah.
Or a swing for someone else in the corner, right? So it's so easy.
That would be so fun.
Starting an offense like that because it's beautiful.
My two like if there was a Cade Cat combination or a LaMelo Cade combination next year, that's going to be my league pass team. So I have just decided I have declared on this podcast that wherever Cade goes, I am going to watch because that dude is awesome. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter, but Jackson Frank, he's a writer out in Washington and for the Gonzaga Bulletin. He goes to Gonzaga, I believe, but he's very good at breaking down prospects, and it's not just Cade's offense, but he's going to be a very good defender in the NBA too. Like he has Danny Green-esque off-ball instincts as a defender, and he has the size and know-how to stay in front of the ball. Like that dude's a complete fucking player, and it's going to be cool to watch. Can I talk to you about a concern I have for the Nets that I think is not an overreaction, but
okay, go.
It's a trend that I don't think is going to go away anytime soon.
Is it defending big men?
Well, yes, it's part of that, but I want to say the Nets are going to be contenders because they have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, but I don't think the gap is as big as people think because some flaws the Nets have. One, they're 12th in defensive rating per cleaning the glass. Obviously, defensive numbers at this point in the season, that's kind of perilous to do because it's early. Its sample size is too small. But there are some troubling things with their defense, like the lack of not as good of rim protection as you would hope between DeAndre Jordan and Jarrett Allen. They are dead last in defensive rebounding percentage, and it matches up with what I've seen from them so far. The two Hawks games over the weekend, and then the two Hawks games, and then last week, and then the Wizards game yesterday, they would finish defensive possessions, or they would play good defense for 20 seconds, and then they would allow a backbreaking offensive rebound, and that happened a lot in the games that I have watched so far from Brooklyn.
Well, that happened to them against the Hornets too. The Hornets just came out with the energy and the youth and the athleticism to out rebound them.
Yep.
And that's how they lost.
Yep. And it's that's the back. I think that's the backbreaking flaw. And obviously it's my bias because I'm a Sixer fan. But I retweeted something the other day. It was like, well, yes, the Sixers probably don't have an answer for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Although you could probably mitigate it by putting Ben Simmons on one of them.
Right.
The Nets don't have an answer for Joel Embiid. And for somebody like that, or Giannis, like, it is concerning.
Or even if they get there.
Or even an Anthony Davis, or a Jokic. No, I'm kidding. The Nuggets aren't that good.
Or DeAndre Ayton.
They're DeAndre Ayton. It's just the Nets don't have the personnel to match up with the skilled bigs in the East. Well, Bam Adebayo is another example, although Bam doesn't have the overwhelming size to completely overpower and throw a team into the ocean like those other bigs I mentioned do. Bam is versatile, changes the game defensively, and is a matchup problem. I think those are big concerns for Brooklyn. And I think the Dinwiddie injury is already starting to have an effect because it puts, and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving can do it. They're great players, but you would rather have an extra ball handler so you can fully utilize the skill sets of those two. Right. And now Kevin Durant is making more plays out of pick and roll more often instead of running pin downs for him and mixing it up more. You're already starting to see the Dinwiddie effect. Although they're a deep team, I did say the Dinwiddie injury was the one injury I think the Nets could not afford to have. And
they announced today that
Kevin Durant now, or Dinwiddie?
Yeah, Dinwiddie's out for the year. They're seeking an exception.
And also, Kevin Durant will be out for 7 days now because he is in quarantine. So that's the other thing with this season, too. There's going to be stuff like this all year where the team could lose a key player because of quarantine and stuff like that. But I'm concerned about the Nets a little bit. I don't see how they fix it.
I see the hole, and I see the issues.
I guess it's more of I don't see how they can fix it. Is more
no. The only thing you could hope for is that DeAndre Jordan finds the fountain of youth, or that Jared Allen takes a step and understands.
Can we go with DeAndre Jordan to find the fountain of youth? Because I'd like some too.
Yeah, that's like the mission, right?
Yeah.
You have 5 months to figure this out, DeAndre.
Yep.
But that's about it. I mean, there's not really much they can do. The buyout market's going to be pretty interesting because there's a lot of teams that are in the market for rim protection.
Yep.
Like the Lakers come to mind. Hassan Whiteside's probably the only kind of big name person that's going to be on that buyout market that I can think of right now off the top of my head.
And it depends on how Sack's record is by that point. But
right. But I could see him getting bought out and going somewhere to a contender. It depends too if. I mean, I've heard rumors that the Kings are trying to move Bagley already. So I mean, that could be sooner
interesting.
rather than later.
Interesting. I haven't seen that or heard that at all. Well, I mean, obviously, there's this whole debacle with his father, and then De'Aaron Fox's dad saying yesterday trade him. Kings and weird parents have had a long history. So I'd rather. This seems kind of normal for me and Kings fans, but yeah, that's not good either. But the thing is, I don't know what. Bagley hasn't said anything about wanting out. I think Bagley honestly is just trying to focus on trying to stay on the court. Trying to stay on the court. He was hurt a lot. He only played 13 games last year, and he kind of found a little bit of a rhythm in Houston. He had some good games, and then this stuff happens, and it's like I'm pretty sure Bagley right now at least is just like, God damn, can I just play? You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah. It's just something to monitor. The East has been fun already. I really hope the Hawks continue to play well. I would so love to see what the discourse would look like by the end of the year if the Hawks won 50 games. the Mavericks defense is still terrible and finished lower than what we expected, and Trae Young's in the MVP discussion, and then people get to relitigate the Luka Doncic Trae Young trade on draft night, and I could just see the bloodbath that comes with that, because the takes are going to fly if Trae Young is like, and if Trae Young is hypothetical, it's early. The Hawks also have a terrible defense, so I don't know how the defense still isn't good, although Hunter and Reddish have taken another leap on that end. It'd be hilarious if Trae Young finished in the top 4 for MVP voting, had a top 4 seed in the East, and then the discourse and the chaos could start happening.
Yeah, I think again it comes back to the thing of there's nothing in my mind that can convince me that Trae Young is a better prospect or a player than Luka. Like, I would take Luka
agreed
10 times out of 10.
Agreed.
So like, to me, when people argue that stuff, it's just, to me, it comes down to a stupid argument of like recency bias and like, okay, yeah, he had one good season. They're like, whatever. Like, look at them as players.
Yeah,
I'd rather have Luka Doncic. So yes, like this trade worked out for both sides, but I still would take Luka over 9 times.
Trade worked out, yeah, but Luka's the better player. I would take him.
And plus, like, didn't the Mavericks give up? I forget who gave up more. Who got drafted earlier? Luka got drafted earlier.
Yeah, so, the Mavericks traded back.
That's right.
To the number 5 pick. And the Hawks picked Doncic, and then they traded him to the Mavericks, and the Mavericks got Trae Young, etc.
Yeah. So yeah, the thing with me with the East, I like the Wizards a lot.
I have to get there first. I want to see them play defense. Like, their defense is still really fucking bad.
Yeah, but the thing, I love watching them play.
Oh, they're fun.
So much
they're
fun
fun
to play. And the thing was I love them now that Rui's back and he's running with them. It gives them just another person to run with them.
Rui's a player, man.
I love Rui.
He's a player, and
that's not just because I'm Japanese and I have a ton of rookie cards.
I just want to say, like, the fan discourse and broadcasters commenting on Rui's games, it makes me uncomfortable. Just because they'll say stuff like konnichiwa and stuff like that, and that just makes me a hell of a lot uncomfortable. And it's like, can we just talk about Rui, the basketball player? Yes, it's cool. It's cool that he's a Japanese basketball player, and it means a lot for Japan and stuff. But
one or two is fine and it's funny, but
it's been going on since last season, and it's like, can we stop with this? Like, Rui's a human, just like all of us. Like,
there's a point where you're like, okay, are we done with this joke now? Like,
yeah, like it's just not. It's just real. It makes me, as a minority, it just makes me. There's a lot of levels of uncomfortability I feel with this. So I wanted to point that out because it goes on Reddit too, and you know how weird Reddit gets with this shit. And Rui is a damn good player. I think he'll be a damn good player. I think defensively, he still needs to figure some stuff out, but I think he has the athleticism, the size, and the length. But he has some ball handling chops. Like, he has some passing chops. He had a pass against the Bulls, and yeah, I was watching Wizards Bulls over the weekend. But he had a nice pass to Thomas Bryant. It was like a nice interior wraparound pass. Like, he's a good player, man. The Wizards have some fun young talent. They are definitely fun to watch. I just thought you were more talking about them like as a playoff team, and it's like, I still have them in the playoffs, but I haven't been encouraged by their defense.
Oh, I just like them. I think as they get more comfortable together as a group, I think they'll get a lot better. But I think, to me, right now, they're just fun to watch because they get out, they get a rebound, and they just run.
They go.
They got so many guys, and the thing is that's great is I love watching when Denny's on the floor. It just, like we were talking about in the draft, he's such a great connecting piece.
Mm-hmm.
He's the perfect Lego brick to put in there and make these pieces, like, to put the when you have the two Lego pieces that are separated, and you put the one in the center that's perfectly matched up. And you're like, oh, it's a solid wall.
Yep.
Like, now this works. like Denny's perfect for that team.
He knows his role. He shoots open shots. He makes quick passes. He could ball handle a little bit. Like the Wizards have had some nice drafts, and if you just look talent wise, like this team should be like, I see no reason why this team shouldn't be like a 5th seed or if they reach their ceiling, like a 4th seed. I mean, we already seen weird stuff with the season so far. I don't see why the Wizards can't go further up, Also, I just love the dynamic between Westbrook and Beal. Like, at least Westbrook has shown a willingness sometimes to run the off-ball stuff for Beal, because he knows that Beal he's a bad motherfucker too. Like, Beal is he's tough. Like, the shots he was making down the stretch and the playmaking he was doing against Brooklyn yesterday was awesome. The Wizards are a fun team. Thomas Bryant, too, is a nice offensive center, like athletic, can shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I always laugh with Thomas Bryant and like the Wizards, because it for a while it was like the Wizards would just look at the end of the Lakers bench and go, we could use that guy.
Yeah, because the Lakers had Isaac Bonga too, right?
Yeah, we had Isaac Bonga. They had Mo Wagner still in there.
Yep, Mo Wagner was
a Laker. So like basically the Wizards have like half of the South Bay Lakers from like a couple years ago.
Yeah.
They really do.
Like, you're talking about the G League team? Yeah, the G. Yep. The Wizards are definitely fun. Very short-lived era for the 4-2 Cleveland Cavaliers. It looks like Dante Exum I'm not watching the game because we're recording, but checking on Twitter and stuff, it looks like Dante Exum suffered a non-contact injury. I hope for the best for Dante, because he has definitely gotten the short end of the stick when it comes to that stuff. But the Cavs are losing a lot of healthy bodies already, and it's kind of a shame, because like the first 3 games of the season, like obviously I wasn't going to have them like as a high playoff team or anything, but they were a competent, fun team with players that I like, that makes sense. Kevin Porter Jr. is dealing with off the court stuff, but Okoro making an impact as a rookie without necessarily scoring. He goes down with the foot injury. Darius Garland has been hurt, and then you got Kevin Love again, who has been out with a strained calf. Like, I'm kind of sad that that now this might be the start of the early season snowball of losses for the Cavs. Yeah. But I will say, I don't react to ESPN top 100 lists, because I just think it's a list. Like, I'm not going to it's going to be different. There's going to be egregious stuff. But having Colin Sexton not in the top 100 was weird to me, especially when I'm not having Sexton like in the high 40s or 50s or anything, but like, he was an efficient offensive player, especially post All-Star break. He took a leap as a 3-point shooter. Slight improvement as a passer, though he's more of a 1-to-1 assist to turnover guy, but having a great start to this year too. And I kind of, as somebody who was down on Colin Sexton and has seen him improve his game year after year, that's been cool to see. And also I have some friends, that cover the Cleveland Cavaliers, so I always kind of tangentially root for them. But that was one where I was like, man, I kind of wanted to see them a little bit more healthy, but Magic are still up there. It's a weird looking conference right now if you just look at the standings, but it's early.
Yeah, it's super early. But yeah, I agree. Like, there's a lot of teams that I think are going to drop off. Like, I don't see the Heat continuing to play this bad. Like,
Jimmy Butler's going to get healthy too and play.
I don't know if the Knicks are going to keep treading water like they are. The only
Thibodeau might scare them into 500.
there's only a couple of things that we know for sure. We know the Lakers are really good, and we know the Pistons are really bad. That's kind of the only things that we know so far throughout the course of this entire season.
Yeah, I did want to make a brief mention of the Pistons, because after seeing their mini series against Boston and seeing how they've been playing, they're not as bad as I thought they would be, but again, it's early. It's going to be bad. But the Pistons seem to be one of those teams to me where if they would make a lot more sense if they had somebody like a obviously you could say this with any team, but more so with the Pistons, if they just had that one high level shot creator from the perimeter, everything just falls into place, I think, for them. Because then you could put all the bigs they have in their proper place. Jeremy Grant has actually been kind of good to start the year, more than I thought, but it's early. I don't think the Pistons are going to be good. I also don't think the Raptors are going to be this bad, although if we don't see a lead from Siakam soon, maybe the Lowry trade might be imminent by the deadline. The Suns, I love the Suns.
I love the Suns.
I know we talk about them every week, but I love the Suns. I love what Chris Paul being put on top of this team has done for them. I didn't expect him to have one of the best defenses in the NBA. They are currently third right now per cleaning the glass with a 104.4 defensive rating. But when you look at the team, it makes sense. You got Chris Paul. Mikal Bridges is looking like Villanova Mikal Bridges, where he's just locking down dudes and then averaging over 16 points on the other end. Then you got Jay Crowder, and then you sub those guys out, and guess who comes in? Cam Johnson, who has taken another leap as a defender, and then Javon Carter can replace Chris Paul. Like, their defense has been way ahead of their offense so far, and their offense hasn't even started clicking yet, and that's scary because Booker hasn't necessarily
Booker was very cold to start the season.
He hasn't been lighting it up necessarily, and yet the Suns still have the seventh best offensive rating, and I feel like their offense hasn't realized its full potential yet. The Suns are so good.
My Suns conference finals pick is looking real good. And
it's looking real good, man. Like, and the thing is, like, it's sustainable too. It's not one of those 7-game thing. Like, this team is legit.
Yep, I'm very happy to watch. I watched every game of theirs that I can, and it's so fun to watch Chris Paul take command. Like, we talk about LeBron being such a great leader. Fucking people need to respect Chris Paul here.
The president of the Players Association. Yeah, fuck yeah, they better respect him as a leader.
Just the way that he leads and the way he teaches young players is incredible to watch.
Yep.
Where you watch every play, every timeout, even every ball stoppage, he's talking to a young guy of like, stand here, do this, blah, blah, and you see it. And his teammates admit that he could be annoying sometimes. Chris has admitted, like, you guys know how I am. I know how I can be sometimes. But at the end of the day, he helps you win damn games. And teammates still love, well, with the exception of probably Blake and DeAndre Jordan, but people have loved playing with Chris Paul. I'm sure Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will tell you how much he loved Chris Paul and how he still talks to him all the time. Like, Chris Paul is awesome. And I'm glad we're in a space now where Chris Paul is still like a top 15 player, top 15 to 12 player. And, you know, because you remember he signed that contract extension a few years ago with the Rockets, and everyone was like, this contract's going to be an albatross. Like, and the concerns were valid. Small point guard, they typically don't age well, blah, blah, blah. I think what people underestimated was Chris Paul's work ethic. LeBron-like work ethic, really. Like, it's in the realm of LeBron's work ethic, Kobe, like all those great players. You've changed his diet. He's still the same smart, pass-first point guard that could score mid-range god, Chris Paul. Like, he's still this good, and it's that contract. Now it's like the contract is worth it, but can Chris Paul stay healthy? But he's shown that so far, and it's awesome. Right. And I think it comes down to, and it's something that people don't think about at all, is the idea that Chris Paul's game was never based on athleticism. It ages so gracefully because it's all based on his skill and his intelligence. And
so the athleticism was sapped away after he got that meniscus surgery in New Orleans.
But his game never relied on it. It's like Luka right now, right? Like Luka could tear up an ACL. Knock on wood, he doesn't. But Luka could tear up an ACL and lose a ton of athleticism now and still be a great player.
Yeah,
it's the way that their games are. They're not based around any kind of athleticism. They don't play. They play at their speed and they play the way they want to play. They don't play to anyone else's stuff. They're not trying to blow past anyone. They're being crafty and they're making moves. and they got what I call the old man moves in the park.
Yeah, he people are getting pissed off at Trae Young's dribble around the screen and then back his ass up into the trailing defender, and it's a foul every time. Chris Paul was the originator of that.
Yeah.
Like Chris Paul popularized that. So like Chris Paul is, I always loved Chris Paul is obviously, it goes without saying, he's one of the best point guards in NBA history, and I think the Suns obviously hit it out of the park here, and it's been awesome to watch because I have been a big Devin Booker fan for a long time. I felt like I've always tried to defend Devin Booker when he got the empty calories scoring guard label, which I never agreed with because of his playmaking. And it's cool to finally see, like, it's cool to see guys like Booker and Ayton finally taste the success, because I think they are going to be really good for a long time, especially Booker. I think he could be a top 10, possibly a best guy on a championship team guy, because I think his offense is that special. But the Suns are a legit contender right now, man. And DeAndre Ayton doesn't care about scoring, like, which is awesome. He's just focusing his attention on the defensive end, which is obviously, like, he always took pride in his defense. I've always been more enamored with his ability to move his feet in college than everybody else was. People just labeled him. I think people saw his rim protection wasn't really good, instead of looking at his strengths defensively, and he's thriving. And shout out to Chris Paul, man. He's awesome.
Yeah, and you can see too that Chris Paul takes special interest in DeAndre Ayton.
Yep.
He's talking to him all the time.
He's talking to him more than he talks to Booker.
Yeah, and every game, you see DeAndre Ayton get more and more comfortable in the pick and roll, get more and more comfortable on the offensive end, knowing where to be.
Yep.
And that's going to be huge for him going forward. I think Chris Paul coming to the Suns maybe doubles, triples DeAndre Ayton's career value over the course of his career for the next decade or whatever.
Absolutely. And also now I want to go look up YouTube highlights of early Chris Paul, because early Chris Paul's athleticism was you remember the dunk he had on Dwight Howard? I think it was his second or third year. Like, that Chris Paul was so quick and so fast. Like, that meniscus surgery, if you remember, I think it was 2009 he had the meniscus surgery. It was after his borderline MVP year that maybe he had an argument over Kobe for. I do miss. I was a secret Hornets fan of those, like, of the Chris Paul Hornets teams where he had Mo Pete, Tyson Chandler, David West, Peja. Like,
I loved those teams.
All those guys. Gennaro Parga.
It was just the satellite Chris Paul with all of these just catch and shoot guys around him.
And Tyson Chandler just jumping out of jumping out of the gym and getting block dunks those Hornets teams were definitely fun for me to watch in high school. Along with even though they weren't on TV often for me to see them, I always enjoyed Hibachi and the Wizards, Agent Zero.
Yeah.
Like, me and my friend were talking about it the other day. Like, I don't want to go into a mid-2000s nostalgia kick here, but I guess that's where we are. But Gilbert Arenas, I guess like a few weeks ago, he said that he would compare his game to Harden, and I think people were giving him a hard time for it, but like, it was kind of true. Like, Gilbert Arenas was a top 5 player, like, pre-knee injury Gilbert Arenas. Mm-hmm. That dude gave Kobe 60 in the Staples Center with, like, moves that made Kobe look like foolish, and Kobe was a good defender at that point in his career. Like,
so the thing is,
like,
with Gilbert
was awesome, man.
Yeah, and the thing with Gilbert that I don't think he gets credit for either, was he was the first one to kind of take, like, the deep Curry threes that we're seeing.
Yeah,
now, right? Like,
yep.
He was taking, like, deep threes.
Yeah, I remember at the time it was like he would take, like, deep threes with, like, the game on the line, and so he had like 3 buzzer beaters in 2007 and like a few more game winners. Like, that dude was kind of ahead of his time a little bit. And prime Gilbert Arenas, like, that would have been fun to watch. Like, I'm looking at his 2006 stat line. He averaged 29 points per game and shot 37% from 3 on 7 attempts per game. Like, in the modern NBA, like, that's
he's shooting 15.
He's shooting at least 10 or 11. But the fact that he was a complete and just a complete and utterly awesome player, and it just made I've just got nostalgic for a second. So sorry about
So
that.
this no problem. So we'll end it here. We'll end it after this question because I was getting to this thing with my dad the other day, and I think or last night actually. So my dad was, with Kobe's all the Kobe stuff coming around again, with Curry dropping the 60. All the Kobe highlights started coming up because Kobe was Curry became the second oldest player.
Yep.
To drop 60, and so all the Kobe highlights started coming up because Kobe obviously is the oldest player, right?
Yep.
So, all the Kobe highlights started coming up. My dad was watching Kobe highlights, and he was like, "Man, I forgot." Like, we're Laker fans, so we understand. You grow up with Kobe, and we understand. We know all the highlights. But my dad goes, "Man, we forget how good Kobe was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, just you time escapes you, right? You forget, and
especially in the social media era,
right?" And so my statement was that Kobe has the best mixtape, like the highlight reel. Kobe is the most fun to watch. And so my dad said, no, it's Jordan. And so we watched Jordan highlights, and he, at the end of it, was like, yeah, okay, I agree with you. Kobe has better highlights. And it doesn't come down to anything skill-wise or like level of difficulty. It comes down to Jordan is so smooth, and he makes things look so easy that they're kind of boring to watch. When you watch Kobe highlights, he's jerking around, he's getting guys out of position, he's doing the up and under his fakes, and like guys are all over him, right?
Yeah, he has those drop steps, those shoulder fakes and stuff like that.
Like Jordan is just gliding by people and speeding past people, and it's kind of wide open dunks and wide open
I would say second three-peat Jordan, he had more fundamental footwork because his athleticism was going a little bit, but I see what you're saying. He made it look so easy.
He's so smooth, right? He's such a smooth athlete.
Yeah, I could see. For me, I guess it depends on preference, right? Because I love Jordan highlights, like even his stuff. And Kobe, I could see a case for Kobe aesthetically being more pleasing to watch than Jordan, especially because, me and you, we grew up with Kobe. We grew up with those guys. So there's going to be an affinity towards that. Me personally, I like watching T-Mac highlights and Allen Iverson highlights just as much.
So guys that I like watching Magic highlights a ton. I love watching Magic Johnson highlights. I love watching Hakeem highlights.
Yeah, Hakeem highlights
I'm a huge footwork guy. So watching Hakeem do the dream shake.
Hakeem's my favorite center of all time.
Yeah,
he's my favorite center.
All of that stuff is awesome to me.
Yeah, you are speaking to my heart because I love Hakeem Olajuwon. That tweet by that NBA media guy that I won't mention because he's usually just awful said that James Harden was the best Rocket ever, and I'm like, did Hakeem die something? Exist? Like, did he not exist? Like, what the hell? Like, Hakeem is so underrated, and obviously I grew up with Shaq more than Hakeem, but like, as a kid I would go. I think what happened with my dad loved Hakeem Olajuwon too. Obviously he was able to see Hakeem more in person than I was, right? But I would grow up. When I knew how to use YouTube and the internet started getting bigger. If it wasn't like NBA like films or whatever that you would see on TV, you would go to YouTube and you would watch Hakeem Olajuwon. And of course, one of the first things that comes up is how he absolutely destroyed David Robinson in his MVP season. Yeah. And so from there, I loved Hakeem. I loved his footwork. The fact that he has his own move called the Dream Shake is deadly. And it's not just one move. It's the Dream Shake is he can react. He can react. The thing with the counters is, for most people, counters can be predetermined. Like, if a guy does this, then I have a plan B. If he does this, then I have a plan C. Hakeem had this special ability to react in real time in a split millisecond. Mm-hmm. Like, if the defender's going this way, in the moment, he'll do a different counter. And that's where the fluidity of his soccer background and everything just came into play there. And I love watching Hakeem. I also love watching T-Mac. I think T-Mac is he'll unfortunately, I think, as the years go on, well, maybe he won't because of the internet era, but I feel like he gets lost among history because there was a legit argument for T-Mac in the early 2000s as being the best player in the world.
Sure.
And that was like a legit discussion.
T-Mac is in the same. I put him in the same kind of crowd as like a Penny Hardaway or a Grant Hill, where people just don't realize like how good these guys were.
Yeah, and T-Mac was, if you're talking about smooth with MJ, like there was an aesthetic smoothness to T-Mac where he was just he got kind of knocked for it because people just assumed he was like that all the time, but he just had this sleepy-eyed cool look about him where he just glides across the court.
Again, it comes down to the Jordan thing of like they're so smooth, it looks so easy, right?
Yeah, but for T-Mac it looked cool. Like he'll give you like the Kobe shoulder shake, but he's 6'8", not 6'6", and it's more jarring, I guess, in a way to see a player that big be that
he's like
agile.
A smoother Durant.
It would, yeah, like smooth, like Kevin Durant. Like at that size, you're just like, oh my god, like this guy.
Durant, they're basically the same player, but Durant has a little bit more of a jerkiness to him.
Yeah, he has that herky jerk. Yeah, exactly. Like especially when you see it in his handle. But T-Max, it was like boom, boom, like fluid, like water, and then he just pull up on you, like, and he would also whip a great pass. Like T-Mac was awesome, and then of course my guy Allen Iverson. It goes without saying, like, Allen Iverson's highlights are timeless, and I just keep thinking, like, what if he was put in an era where, like today, where the coach would actually put the ball in Allen Iverson's hands and not play him as a shooting guard next to Eric Snow and Aaron McKee and see like what he would do with the Harden offense, like where you just ISO him at the top of the key and you're either running pick and roll or Iverson, possibly the fastest point guard in history, is going to blow by you just by himself. I just think about that all the time with him. But those would be my three guys. Kobe too. Even though I grew up as a Laker hater, like I always respected Kobe. I feared every time he had the ball in his hands with like a minute left or whenever it was crunch time. Like all the Kobe things that I think about him that are great is very fear-worthy. But there were obviously playoff games I remember about him, like Game 6. I always watch his Game 6 2010 Western Conference highlights against the Suns. Because, I mean, this, like, he had like 3 straight shots on Grant Hill in that second half where he was doubled, pump faking, trying to get the defenders that are already in his grill to bite. And he just rises up and makes a stupid, tough fadeaway. And it's like, and that was the closeout game. And I was like, damn, yeah, this is over for the Suns. Especially, he hit a fadeaway over Grant Hill, and Alvin Gentry called a timeout, and Kobe just turned around and smacked him on smacked him on the ass. It was like, oh god, yeah, no, this is over. Those would be some of my favorites, I guess. Sorry for the long-winded answer, but you made me go on a nostalgic trip here.
But yeah, that kind of became the topic of discussion the other night. So that's.
So I mean, I assume you love the Kobe highlights are your favorites. Besides
I like
Hakeem.
Kobe highlights. I like Magic highlights. Hakeem, like we talked about.
Yeah, Magic. You said that. Yeah,
I'm a big D Wade guy too, so I like D Wade highlights.
I used to wear when D Wade went on his finals run in 2006. That was going into my freshman year. I did a summer program for the high school that I was going to. It was basically, if you do the summer program, it was kind of like an interlude to the basketball team's camp, and you kind of got a leg up in terms of making the team if you did the summer thing right. And so, I was playing summer games, and we had our red uniforms, and I had these really high red socks, and I would wear them like Dwayne Wade because Dwayne Wade's playoff run was just fascinating to me as a kid. He went through the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. He and obviously came back against the Maverick. It was just an unexpected run from the Heat, and I loved watching Dwayne Wade. And so I copied his high sock style, and I would wear them to games. It's kind of like a nice little, teenager watching a future Hall of Famer, like, oh, this guy's going to be good, I'm going to be like him type thing.
So funny.
Yeah.
All right, man. Anything else before we close this out?
No. I should let you know that I finished Mandalorian season 2 before we get off.
Oh, and
I was pissed that it was only 8 episodes. So like I was on episode 7 and I was like, oh, I'll binge watch more for the weekend. There's probably like 12 episodes in here. And I'm like looking at the episode guide and there's like only one more episode. I'm like, wait, like it hasn't been coming out for a few weeks. Is this it? Like I was so mad.
Yeah.
It's so good, man. Like
it's so good.
It's like, and I think last season it was kind of like it got the credit like it was oh, you know, it's a Star Wars Western, like, and that was its appeal, right? But there's like more lore that has been built out in this season and more layered storytelling, which I really like when shows evolve like that. The Mandalorian's just awesome. And then, of course, like, you know, all this, I don't want to spoil it, but all the stuff that's coming out after this with all the characters that have been introduced, old characters that we know and love, like, it's to
me, the biggest thing to me for this season, and it was a worry for me coming in, and I don't think this is a spoiler because we knew this. I think pretty much everyone knows this. My concern was like bringing in a ton of characters that we already knew, and I didn't want the show to become like, oh well, Mando and who's he gonna run into this week, right? Like
the monster of the week type thing.
I didn't want it to be like a tour through the Star Wars universe with Mando, right? Like I don't want him just running into famous characters every time you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, so when we heard like, oh, Bo-Katan's in this season, great. That makes sense. Bo-Katan's totally cool and she makes sense. Of course he would run into her. And it's like, oh, Ahsoka's in this season? Well, okay, I don't know. Like, where does she fit in? Okay, well, whatever. And so the list kind of goes on and on and on. You're like, man, how many characters are they going to bring in here? And then all of my concerns went away because it was done so beautifully.
Yeah, because by the end of it, you're just like, oh, wow, this was a great... And then, of course, the ending...
of course.
The ending tugged on my heartstrings. It was like... It was one of those like, oh, like, damn, like, don't make me cry right here type stuff.
I cried.
Hey, man, there's nothing wrong with crying. You got to let it out sometimes. Like,
Hell
I was like, wow, this is beautiful and also sad. But it was Mandalorian is a great show. I can't wait for the next season too, and then I can't wait for all the extra stuff that they have coming out. The era of Disney, man.
Yeah, man. We have WandaVision in 2 weeks. I'm very excited. So, actually next week.
A lot of the Marvel shows are coming out too.
So we have WandaVision coming out on the 15th. So that's like a week and a half, and then we have the Falcon Winter Soldier show in March. So
I think my free year of Disney Plus is up, so I'm gonna have to hit up Dad and make sure that all that's in order.
Totally worth it, man. And the thing is too, like the deal that they have, the Disney package, so to speak, where it's Hulu,
ESPN Plus,
ESPN Plus for $12 is insanely good. What?
Yeah, it's insanely good value. But I still have the mentality of a college student, so shout out to all my loved ones who are letting me use their stuff.
Totally with you there.
I pay for Verve, an anime streaming service, so I provide the anime. That's what I bring to the table with my friends while I use all their other stuff.
There you go.
So
sharing is caring, baby.
Yeah, sharing is caring.
All right, guys. So we're gonna end it off there. Thank you guys for listening. We have another week of fantastic NBA basketball coming up. And do you have any games that you're looking forward to, by the way, Jordan? Before we end there. Any matchups that you're looking at and going like, damn?
I was looking forward to Sixers Nets, but it's kind of dampened a little bit because Durant's not going to be there now. Basically, it's not so much more games. I'm looking to track teams like, you know, the Blazers, and I want to see the Nets kind of see if they can fix their rebounding and slight defense problem. I'm going to be watching a lot of Kings games too, because I am going to be, you know, covering some of these games for iHeart, and I really want to see. I hope Tyrese Halliburton comes back because I think he's been the rookie of the year so far, and he's been awesome. But there's not necessarily any games. But what about you, man?
So one game I am targeting, so to make sure I watch and really kind of. I'm probably gonna watch multiple times. On Saturday there is a Nuggets Sixers game that I'm very excited about.
Oh, Jokic versus Embiid.
Embiid. I think that's a really good matchup. I think both those teams are really interesting to me. I'm curious how they're gonna work out. And we have a team in the Sixers that are kind of clicking on cylinders and getting going, and the Nuggets team that's kind of a little off. But I mean, the thing is with the Nuggets is they have the bodies to be able to match up with the Sixers, and I think they're one of the few teams that do, where they have Jokic and they have Porter, who could kind of, at least size-wise and athleticism-wise, keep up with Ben Simmons, which I think is one of the few players that can.
That's my word with the Nuggets. They've lost too much. I mean, when they lost Jeremy Grant, their defense was already average, and they haven't been good so far this year. So it's like, did I have the Nuggets too far up in the tier? I don't know. We'll find out. But before we go, I hope people placed bets on Embiid's MVP odds before the year started, because I imagine that bet, if you make it right now, won't be as valuable. He has been dominant on both ends of the floor. The Sixers have the best defensive rating in the NBA by a bit. It's early, obviously, but he looks to be engaged, in shape, and he has started to figure out double teams, and I think that's because of personnel. But if Embiid, that was the last step with Embiid's offensive game, can he figure out the right read out of a double team? And if he continues this pace, like showing that he keeps figuring it out, well, then that was the last piece. You can't stop the guy. That was
sort of the same argument with Anthony Davis's offensive game too. But you're starting to see it this season that Marc Gasol is having such an impact on him, where he's starting to learn.
Davis has thrown some nice passes this year.
He threw a couple of Marc Gasol bounce passes the other night where I was like, oh, he's learning.
Yeah.
He's figuring it out.
That's what I'm seeing with Embiid right now. I'm like, oh shit, he's learning. He's inviting the double team. Like, he's willingly inviting the double team so we can get the offense going. And I've never seen so many open corner threes in my 4 years watching this fucking team. This season, I've seen more open corner threes from the Sixers than at any point during the Ben Simmons and Embiid era, even with the Redick, Covington, Saric lineup that had all that shooting. Like, Embiid is figuring stuff out, and I think that's where, before the season, I had the Sixers as a high tier contender, or not contender, but I had them high in the tier 2 of the Eastern Conference behind the Bucks and the Nets. It was like, if Embiid gets back into shape, that's the best big in basketball. So I'm excited. It's good times, and it's good times for this podcast as well.
Yeah, guys. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
The B.O.B.